The story of Dev Mather did not begin with a gunfight, a gold mine, or a grand adventure. It began with a storm, a huge storm, a storm so strong that the people of the frontier talked about it for many years after it had passed. They called it the Great Desert Storm of '49. Some said it was the worst storm the West had ever seen. Others said it was punishment from the sky. But no matter what people believed, one fact was the same. That storm changed the lives of many. And in the middle of all that chaos, a legend was born. On that night, the desert sky was black. The wind screamed across the sand like a living creature. Houses shook. Wagons rolled over. People hid inside small wooden rooms and prayed the walls would hold. The air was so thick that no one could see more than a few steps ahead. The storm had swallowed everything. Roads disappeared. Landmarks vanished. Even strong men cried out as the sand cut at their skin like tiny knives. But out in that wild, violent darkness, a man moved with purpose. He was tired. He was hurt. But he did not stop. In his arms, wrapped in a torn blanket, he carried a newborn baby. That baby was Dev Mather. The man holding him was Dev's father, a quiet tinkerer named Abel Mather. People said Abel could fix any machine, even ones he had never seen before. They said he had the hands of a craftsman and the mind of a thinker. But on that terrible night, he was just a father fighting the storm with every last bit of strength. He had Dot behind him lay the ruins of what used to be his small desert home. The storm had crushed it like paper. Dev's mother, a traveling healer named Mara, had not survived. Abel had held her hands until the wind stole her last breath. And then, with tears mixing into the sand, he had taken their newborn son and started walking. No one knew exactly how far Abel walked that night. Some witnesses, years later, claimed they saw a lone figure crawling across the dunes. Some swore they saw a man carrying a bundle, protecting it with his own body. Others said Abel never walked at all, that the storm carried him. The truth, as always in the West, was lost somewhere between reality and rumor. But one thing remained certain. Abel did not let the storm take his boy Dot. By sunrise, the storm had weakened. The sky slowly turned from black to gray, from gray to gold. The wind grew gentle. The world looked fresh and strange, like it had been rebuilt overnight. And lying at the edge of a small canyon, Abel Mather finally collapsed. A group of merchants found him. They were traveling from one mining town to another when the storm forced them to camp in the canyon. When morning came, they discovered Abel, face down in the sand, gripping the blanket with the baby inside. The merchants rushed to help him, but it was too late. Abel Mather had given everything, every breath, every ounce of strength to protect his son. The merchants buried Abel under a simple wooden cross. One of them, an older man with a broken hat and kind eyes, whispered, "You kept your promise." Then they turned their attention to the baby. They expected him to cry or shake, but the child was calm. His eyes were open, strangely focused, almost studying the world around him. It was that moment when the merchants realized this baby was different. They carried him to the nearest settlement, a rough collection of wooden homes and tired people called Dust Haven. Life there was not easy. The ground was dry. Work was hard. Water was precious. But the people were simple, honest, and willing to help. When the merchants explained what had happened, the townsfolk agreed to care for the child. They named him Dev, after his mother's favorite word, devotion. As Dev grew, Dust Haven became his first home. The people raised him together. The blacksmith taught him how to shape metal. The seamstress taught him how to mend torn clothes. The carpenter showed him how it would fit together to make something strong. Everyone shared knowledge, and Dev absorbed all of it. Even at a young age, he understood things quickly. He watched. He listened. He studied. By the time he turned 6, Dev showed signs of an unusual gift. He could look at broken objects, sold watches, cracked tools, jammed gears, and somehow understand what was wrong. He didn't talk much. He didn't explain. But he fixed things. And every time he did, people whispered, "He's his father's son." By age 10, Dev was known by everyone in Dust Haven, not because he was loud or wild like most boys his age. Dev was quiet, almost too quiet. But when something went wrong, people went to him. A farmer brought him a broken plow. A mother brought him a child's toy. A traveler brought him a rusty pocket watch that hadn't ticked in 20 years. Dev fixed all of them, not because he wanted praise, but because fixing things made sense to him. It made the world feel right. Some old men believed the storm had changed him, that the sky had marked him in some strange way. Others said it was simply the blood of Abel and Mara, two gifted parents, living inside a quiet boy. Whatever the truth was, everyone felt the same thing. Dev Mather was not ordinary. He was meant for something bigger, something important, something the world had not yet revealed. But as Dev grew older, the frontier around him began to change. Shadows stretched across the towns. Crime rose. New dangers arrived. And soon, Dev Mather would have to leave the quiet life of Dusthaven behind. Because legends are not born to stay hidden. They are born to face the world. As the years passed in Dusthaven, Dev Mather changed from a quiet boy into a young man with eyes that seemed to notice everything. People often said he didn't just look at the world, he studied it. He watched how doors hung on hinges, how wagon wheels bent under weight, how a person's voice shook when they were hiding something. Dev didn't try to learn these things. They came naturally, like breathing. He grew up without parents, but he was never truly alone. The whole town helped shape him. Jacob the blacksmith became a father figure, teaching Dev how to hold tools and respect heat and metal. Old Clara, the seamstress, taught him patience as he repaired torn fabric stitch by stitch. Even the rough miners showed him how to judge danger by the sound of cracking rock. Knowledge arrived from everywhere, and Dev absorbed it silently. Dev's mind worked differently from others. When something broke, most people cursed or panicked. Dev just tilted his head, studied the pieces, and found the one thing that didn't fit. Once he understood the problem, the solution always came quickly. By the time Dev turned 12, he had already fixed most of the town's tools. Dusthaven relied on him more than he realized. He repaired water pumps, rebuilt wagon axles, sharpened dull knives, and even helped a doctor fix a broken medical device no one else could understand. Still, Dev never asked for a coin. He didn't want payment. Helping people felt right, and that was enough yet. For all his skill, Dev remained a mystery. He rarely spoke unless necessary. He preferred to listen rather than talk. He spent hours sitting near the canyon edge, staring at the horizon as if he was waiting for something even he didn't understand. People often wondered what went on inside his mind, but Dev kept his thoughts locked away. One afternoon, when Dev was about 13, Dusthaven faced a problem bigger than any broken tool. A group of outlaws rode into town. They weren't famous or legendary, just desperate. They demanded money, food, and supplies. The townsfolk were frightened. No one wanted trouble. Dev was standing in the corner of the general store when the trouble came through the door. The outlaw leader, a tall man with scars across his face, grabbed the storekeeper by the collar and threatened him. The storekeeper shook uncontrollably, his voice barely a whisper. Everyone expected Dev to run or hide. He was just a boy. But instead of running, Dev stepped forward. The outlaw stopped and looked at the quiet teenager with confusion. "What do you want, boy?" he growled. Dev said nothing at first. He only pointed at the outlaw's holster. One of the loose straps was hanging open. The outlaw frowned, annoyed. "You think that matters?" Still silent, Dev walked closer. Every eye in the store followed him. He reached out and tightened the strap securely. The outlaw leader stared, too shocked to move. Dev took 2 steps back, lifted his eyes, and simply said, "Now it won't fall." For several long seconds, the entire store was silent. Then the outlaw leader laughed a deep, surprised laugh. "You got some nerve," he said. "But you're right." He tapped the holster. "Would have slipped off my belt." Something changed in the room after that moment. The tension broke just enough for the storekeeper to breathe. The outlaws eased their anger, their threat weakened by Dev's calm presence. Though they still took some supplies, they left without hurting anyone. Dusthaven survived because of a single quiet gesture from a boy who saw what others missed. The town talked about that moment for weeks. Some called Dev brave, others called him lucky. But one woman, old Clara, said something no one forgot. "He's not brave or lucky. He simply understands people." It was true. Dev often saw fear, pride, and lies more clearly than others saw the weather. He understood how people worked just as he understood how machines worked. As Dev approached 16, his body grew stronger, but his mind sharpened even more. Jacob taught him how to shoot a rifle, not for hunting or fighting, but for discipline. Dev practiced quietly behind the blacksmith shop, studying the wind, the weight of the gun, the pull of the trigger. Jacob once said Dev could shoot the stem of a cactus flower without shaking. Dev only nodded, but Dev didn't dream of being a fighter. He dreamed of being useful. Still, the frontier was changing. Bigger towns were rising. Lawmen were stretched thin. Crime was spreading across the land like wildfire. Dust Haven remained small and safe for a while, but trouble had begun to drift closer, and Dev noticed. One evening, after repairing a broken lantern for the town doctor, Dev overheard two travelers talking outside the clinic. They spoke of a nearby mining town named Iron Mesa, a place growing fast, but also drowning in corruption. They mentioned Marshal Rowan Pike, a respected lawman who needed smart, steady-minded people to help bring order. That night, Dev couldn't sleep. He stared at the ceiling, hearing the wind whisper past the windows. For the first time in his life, he felt a pull like the world was calling him forward. Dust Haven had given him everything, but his heart knew he didn't belong only to that small town. He belonged somewhere bigger, somewhere harder, somewhere his gifts could protect more than a handful of people. The next morning, Dev packed a small bag. He didn't take much, just his tools, a notebook, and a single photo of Dust Haven's main road. When the townsfolk gathered around him, their faces were filled with worry and pride. Jacob placed a hand on Dev's shoulder. "The world out there is rough," he said, "but you're ready." Dev nodded once. No speech, no tears, just silent gratitude. Then he mounted a borrowed horse and rode toward Iron Mesa, the place where his real journey would begin. Because legends do not wait for the world. They walk toward it. Dev Mather reached Iron Mesa after 3 long days of travel. The journey wasn't dangerous, but it was tiring. The sun burned fiercely during the day, and the nights were cold enough to make his fingers numb. But Dev didn't complain. He rode steady, with quiet determination in his eyes. He didn't know exactly what waited for him in this new town, but he knew it would shape the rest of his life. Iron Mesa was nothing like Dust Haven. Dev realized that the moment he crested the final hill and looked down at the settlement below. Dust Haven was small and gentle. Iron Mesa was busy, loud, and restless. Smoke rose from chimneys. People rushed from one place to another. Horses pulled heavy carts. Miners walked with dirty faces and tired eyes. Shopkeepers shouted prices from their doorways. And in the center stood a tall sheriff's office with a metal star shining in the sun. Dev took in everything at once, the way the buildings leaned, the way the roads curved, the way people reacted when danger passed by. He noticed a broken sign swinging unevenly above the saloon door. He noticed a man holding his arm as if hurt. He noticed 2 strangers whispering something that looked like trouble. Iron Mesa was full of life, but also full of problems. He tied his horse near the water trough and stepped onto the main street. People glanced at him but didn't pay much attention. Travelers came and went every day. Dev blended in isolage, another dusty rider trying to find a place in the world. His first stop was the general store. He needed to ask for directions to Marshal Rowan Pike. When he entered, he saw shelves packed with supplies, canned food, gun oil, rope, and small tools. The shopkeeper looked up, a friendly but tired man with gray hair. "Help you, son?" he asked. "I'm looking for the marshal," Dev said in his calm, steady voice. The shopkeeper raised an eyebrow. "Rowan Pike, you looking for work?" Dev only nodded. Double quotes. "Well," the man said, "you'll find him at the sheriff's office. But let me give you some advice." He leaned forward. "Iron Mesa isn't like other towns. Things are complicated here." Dev didn't ask why. Complicated was something he understood very well. He thanked the shopkeeper, stepped outside, and walked toward the sheriff's office. The building was larger than Dev expected. Solid wood, thick walls, iron bars on the windows. Inside, he found a tall man with a thick mustache, sorting through papers. His badge glinted on his chest. "Marshal Rowan Pike?" Dev asked. The marshal looked up. His eyes were sharp, like someone who had seen too much and trusted too little. "That's me," he said. "What do you need, kid?" "I heard you're looking for help," Dev replied. Marshal Pike laughed softly. "Everyone hears that. What makes you think you're the right kind of help? Dev thought about Dust Haven, about the outlaws, about every broken thing he had ever fixed. Then he simply said, I understand problems. The marshal studied him for a moment, as if measuring the weight of those words. Finally, he gestured to a chair. Sit, Pike said. Let's see what you understand. Dev sat quietly. Pike leaned back. Iron Mesa's growing fast. Mines bring money. Money brings greed. Greed brings crime. I have 5 men working under me, but not enough brains and not enough loyalty. I need someone who can think, someone who can see the truth behind what people pretend. Dev listened closely. The marshal continued. I don't hire boys, but I do hire talent. So here's your test. He took a small metal puzzle from his desk, a strange, twisted piece of iron with 2 rings trapped inside. Miner found this broken in the shaft. Said it jammed the gears. I need to know how. And I need to know if someone did it on purpose. Dev held the metal in his hands. He turned it once. Twice, he ran a finger along the bent portion. He noticed tiny scratches near one ring. Scratches that didn't match the rest of the metal. It wasn't an accident, Dev said calmly. Someone forced the ring, bent it sideways. Gear teeth wouldn't grab after that. Marshal Pike raised his eyebrows. You got that in 20 seconds. Dev looked up. 22. Pike stared at him, then laughed. Well, I'll be damned. You do understand problems. Dev didn't smile. He never did. But something inside him felt lighter, like he had stepped onto the right path. Marshal Pike grew serious. I can use someone like you. But this job isn't easy. You'll face thieves, smugglers, and desperate men. You'll see good people do bad things, and bad people do worse. Dev nodded. You still want it? Pike asked. Yes. And just like that, Dev Mather became the youngest deputy Iron Mesa had ever seen. But the job didn't begin with adventure. It began with observation. Marshal Pike took Dev on patrols through the town. He taught him how to read people's faces, how to watch for hidden signs, how to see danger before it arrives. Dev learned fast. He learned that Iron Mesa was full of secrets, some small, some deadly. He learned that the mayor, Silas Crowley, smiled too wide and watched people too closely. He learned that miners were scared of something they never talked about. He learned that the saloon had more visitors at night than made sense. And he learned that Marshal Pike trusted very few people, and now Dev was one of them. But Dev also discovered something else, something he could feel like an uneasy wind against his skin. Iron Mesa was not just a town with problems, it was a town hiding a storm. And Dev Mather was walking right toward the center of it. Dev Mather had been in Iron Mesa for only 2 weeks. But he had already learned enough to know one thing. This town was not safe. It wasn't the loud danger, the kind where men shouted and bullets flew. No, Iron Mesa held a quieter danger, a hidden danger. Something that lived in the shadows between buildings and behind closed doors. And Dev, with his sharp eyes and quiet nature, began to see what others ignored. Every morning, Dev walked the town with Marshal Pike. They checked the saloon, the trading post, the stables, and the miners' barracks. Pike asked questions. Dev listened. Pike talked to people. Dev watched their hands, their eyes, their reactions. Dev saw guilt where others saw smiles. He saw fear where others saw nothing at all. One day, as Dev and the marshal walked past the mining yards, a group of workers rushed out of the shaft, coughing and trembling. Their faces were pale, their expressions tight with panic. Marshal Pike hurried to them. What happened? Pike asked. One of the miners, a large man with dust-covered gloves, answered shakily. The lift jammed again, he said. Nearly crushed 2 men. Same thing as last month. Pike sighed heavily. Another accident. Dev knelt near the lift equipment. He saw the cables frayed in several spots, as if cut by something sharp. He ran his fingers gently along the fibers. The damage wasn't from natural wear. It wasn't from weight. It was clean, precise. Someone had done this on purpose. Dev said quietly, this wasn't an accident. Marshal Pike looked over. You're sure? Dev nodded. The cuts are too even. Same angle. Same shape. Pike clenched his jaw. That makes 3 this month, Dev asked. Who controls the mine? Pike hesitated, then answered. Mayor Silas Crowley. Dev didn't say anything, but the name settled in his mind like a heavy stone. Mayor, the man whose smile never reached his eyes. The man who always watched Dev, as if measuring him. The man the miners refused to speak about openly. The first seed of suspicion was planted. That night, after patrol, Dev walked alone through Iron Mesa. The streets were quiet. Lamps flickered. A dog barked in the distance. Dev's boots made soft crunching sounds over the dirt road. He didn't walk for rest. He walked because thinking came easier when the world was silent. He passed the saloon and noticed the back door slightly open. Voices drifted out low, hurried whispers. Dev stayed in the shadows and listened. Inside, a group of men spoke around a table. "He's just a kid," one hissed. "Doesn't matter," another answered. "Pike trusts him. That makes him dangerous." "Crowley won't like this," a third voice warned. "He'll like it even less if the boy discovers the tunnels." Dev froze. Tunnels. He leaned closer. "We keep things quiet until Friday," the first man said. "That's when the shipment goes through the old shaft. Once it's across the border, we're in the clear." More footsteps approached. Dev stepped back into the alley shadows. A man exited through the door, looked around nervously, then hurried away. Dev watched each of them leave, memorizing their faces. His heartbeat stayed steady, but inside, he felt something new, something cold and sharp. Iron Mesa wasn't just troubled, it was controlled. And whoever controlled it didn't want Dev alive. That next morning, Marshal Pike found Dev already awake, examining a map of the mining grounds. "You look like you didn't sleep," Pike muttered. Dev stayed focused. "There are tunnels under the mines." Pike stiffened. "Who told you that?" "No one," Dev answered. "I heard men talking last night. They mentioned the shipment and the tunnels." Pike rubbed his face, frustrated. "I was hoping you wouldn't get caught up in this part." Dev looked at him. "Why didn't you tell me?" Pike hesitated, then sighed. "Because this town has secrets too dangerous for a boy." Dev didn't accept that. "I'm not a boy." Pike stared at him for a moment, then nodded slightly. "You're right. You see more than most grown men, and you're smart enough to understand danger." He walked to the window and looked out over the town. "Iron Mesa is rotten underneath," he said softly. "Mayor Crowley runs smuggling operations through the mines, stolen goods, illegal weapons, fake gold shipments, you name it. He uses the tunnels to move everything out at night." Dev listened carefully, absorbing every detail. Pike continued. "The miners know. The businessmen know. Even some lawmen know. But no one speaks. Crowley is powerful. He pays well, and if he can't buy your silence," he paused, "he finds other ways." Dev asked, "Why haven't you stopped him?" Pike laughed without humor. "Because I don't have enough men. His gang outnumbers us. And if I tried to arrest him without proof, the whole town would collapse into chaos." Dev stared at the map again. "Then we need proof." Pike looked at him slowly. "And what makes you think you can find it?" Dev's voice was quiet but certain. "Because I see things others miss." The marshal exhaled deeply. "You really want to go down this path, don't you?" Dev nodded. Pike thought for a long moment, then placed a strong hand on Dev's shoulder. "Then we do it smart," he said. "Quiet, careful. One step at a time." Dev understood. From this moment on, he was no longer just a deputy. He was a threat to the most dangerous man in Iron Mesa. That evening, Dev went to the mining yard alone. The sun was setting, turning the sky orange and gold. Workers were leaving for the night. The large shaft leading underground stood silent. Dev stepped closer to the lift. He saw it again, those same precise cuts in the cables. A sign, a message, a warning. Someone wanted the town to believe the accidents were natural. Someone wanted fear to grow. Someone wanted control. Dev touched the cable lightly and whispered to himself, "This is all connected." Then he heard footsteps behind him, slow, heavy, purposeful. Dev turned and found himself face to face with Mayor Silas Crowley. Crowley smiled wide, too wide. "Evening, Deputy," the mayor said softly. "You're out late." Dev didn't blink. Neither did Crowley. And in that silent moment, Dev knew this was the beginning of a war he never asked for, but one he could not walk away from. Dev Mather stood at the entrance of the mine shaft, as Mayor Silas Crowley approached him with slow, confident steps. The sky behind Crowley was turning deep purple, the last light of the day fading behind the ridges. The shadows seemed to grow longer around the man, as if darkness followed wherever he walked. "Evening, Deputy," Crowley said again. His tone was warm, but his smile didn't reach his eyes. "The mines are closed for the night. Strange time to visit, don't you think?" Dev didn't move. He didn't hide the fact that he was looking at the frayed cables, the tracks in the dirt, the footprints that didn't match miner boots. His voice was steady. "Just checking on the equipment?" Crowley chuckled softly, stepping closer. "Such dedication. Marshal Pike must be proud." Dev kept his eyes on the man. Crowley noticed. "You're curious?" the mayor added. "Curious men are useful, until they start asking the wrong questions." His smile sharpened. "And Iron Mesa doesn't like wrong questions." Dev didn't respond. He knew the mayor expected fear, but Dev was calm, quiet, steady, like always. Crowley leaned in. "A word of advice, Deputy. Worry about the parts of town you're supposed to see, not the parts meant to stay hidden." Dev finally spoke, his voice low but firm. "Hidden things usually cause the most trouble." For a moment, the mayor's expression cracked. Something cold flashed in his eyes. Then he recovered. "You're young," Crowley said. "Smart, but this town is older and smarter. Remember that." With that, he tipped his hat, turned away, and walked into the fading light. Dev watched him until he disappeared behind the ridge. One thing was clear. Crowley wasn't just warning him. He was testing him, watching him, measuring him. Dev walked back to town with careful steps, replaying every word in his mind. He wasn't scared, but he understood danger better than most. And he knew, without a doubt, that the mayor was behind the mine sabotage, and much more. Back in Marshal Pike's office, Dev explained what happened. The marshal listened without interruption, his face growing more serious with each detail. "Crowley approached you?" Pike asked sharply. "Yes," Dev answered. "He knew I was looking." Pike cursed under his breath. "That means he sees you as a threat." Dev nodded. He had felt it in the mayor's stare, sharp like a knife, quiet like poison. Pike walked across the room, thinking hard. Crowley has influence, money, men who would do anything for him. Getting too close puts you in danger. He's not someone who plays fair. Dev replied simply, "I'm not afraid." "I know," Pike said. "That's what worries me." The marshal sat down heavily. "I've been trying to bring Crowley down for years. Always lacked proof. Always lacked someone who could see the details." He looked up at Dev. "But maybe you're the missing piece." Dev didn't say he already knew that. He simply nodded. Over the next few days, Dev noticed changes in Iron Mesa. Small changes, but important ones. People spoke in hushed tones when he walked by. Miners avoided eye contact. Shopkeepers looked nervous, double-checking their doors at sunset. Even some deputies seemed uneasy around Dev, as if unsure whether to fear or trust him. Rumors were spreading. Crowley's men were watching him, and every corner of the town seemed to whisper, "Dev Mather is digging too deep." Pike kept him close. The marshal didn't want Dev walking alone, especially near the mines or the saloon. One evening, Pike and Dev returned from patrol to find a note pinned to the sheriff's door. No name, no signature. Just 5 words. "Stop looking where you shouldn't." Dev studied the handwriting. Neat, straight, controlled. Likely someone educated. Someone who wanted to intimidate without revealing identity. Pike crumpled the note angrily. "They're trying to scare you." Dev shook his head. "They're trying to distract us." The marshal gave him a proud, tired smile. "You're right. They wouldn't warn us unless we're getting close." Later that night, Dev walked outside alone for a moment of quiet. He went behind the sheriff's office, where the ground was soft, dust scattered with footprints. Dev crouched low, observing the marks. A boot print, deep on one side, another dragged slightly. He followed the trail. It led behind the stables, then stopped abruptly near the water barrels. Dev leaned closer, brushing the dirt with his hand. Something small glinted under the moonlight. A broken metal buckle. Dev lifted it. It wasn't from a miner's boot. The design was fancy, polished, expensive. Something a mayor's guard might wear. Dev pocketed the piece. Proof came slowly, one detail at a time. The next day, Pike sent Dev to the saloon to observe quietly. No confrontation, no talking, just watching. The room was loud and smoky, full of laughter, cards, shouting, and the clinking of glasses. Dev sat at the far corner, his eyes calm, his hands still. He saw everything. A man sliding a pouch under the table, a guard whispering to a stranger, a drunk miner mentioning Friday night deliveries. Before someone quickly shushed him, Dev's attention sharpened. Friday night, the shipment mentioned in the secret meeting he overheard. The tunnels, everything was connecting. Then, through the smoke, Dev saw something that made his breath catch for the first time in days. Mayor Crowley's right-hand man, passing a rolled map to a shady traveler. Dev recognized the map. Instantly, it showed the underground tunnels. Whatever was happening Friday night, it would be big and dangerous. Back at the sheriff's office, Dev explained what he had discovered. Pike paced the room, weighing options. Friday, he repeated. That gives us only 2 days. Dev asked, what do we do? Pike sighed. We prepare, and we stay quiet. If Crowley suspects we know, he'll strike first. Dev looked out the window into the night. He thought of Dust Haven, of Jacob, of the people who believed in him. He didn't regret coming to Iron Mesa, but he knew this path would only get darker. Then Pike placed a hand on Dev's shoulder. You have a gift, he said, but gifts come with danger. You need to decide. Dev, are you ready to go all the way with this? Once we start, there's no turning back. Dev looked up, eyes steady. I'm ready. Pike nodded slowly. Then Friday night, we go into the tunnels. Dev felt the weight of those words, but he didn't flinch, because legends are forged in darkness, and Dev Mather was walking straight into it. Friday arrived quietly, but the air in Iron Mesa felt heavy, tense, almost like the whole town was waiting for something to happen. Dev Mather woke before sunrise. He sat on the edge of his small bunk inside the sheriff's office, polishing the metal pieces of his lantern and checking the tools in his bag. He wasn't nervous. He wasn't scared, but he understood the weight of the night ahead. This wasn't like fixing a broken wagon wheel or stopping a miner from starting a bar fight. Tonight, he would step into the hidden heart of Iron Mesa, the place where danger lived. Marshal Pike entered the room, fastening the buttons on his vest. He looked tired, but determined. You ready? Pike asked. Dev nodded once. Yes. The marshal placed a folded map on the table. This is the layout of the mine, but it doesn't show the secret tunnels. We'll have to find those on our own. Who else is coming? Dev asked. Pike hesitated. No one. We can't trust the deputies. Some of them take Crowley's money. Dev didn't react, but inside, he understood the seriousness. They were alone, Pike strapped on his holster. Remember, Dev, keep your eyes open and stay behind me. If something happens, you run. Dev closed his bag. If something happens, I fix it. Pike smiled faintly. I figured you'd say that. The sun slipped behind the canyon walls as the two of them approached the mines. Everything was quiet. Too quiet. No workers. No guards. No sound except the wind brushing over the rocks. Pike whispered. Crowley cleared this area on purpose. They don't want witnesses. Dev studied the footprints in the dust many pairs. All fresh, all leading inside the main shaft. They were here recently, he said. The marshal nodded. Then we move. They entered the mine with lanterns in hand. The air grew cooler and damp. Wooden beams lined the walls, creaking softly. Dev scanned every detail. Loose rocks, recent tool marks, scraped metal. He memorized everything. After several minutes, they reached a fork in the tunnel. Pike raised his lantern. Left leads to the main mining chamber. Right isn't on the map. Dev pointed to the right. Footprints go that way. Pike took a deep breath. Then that's our path. They moved deeper. The walls changed from rough stone to smoother shapes, almost carved by hand. Dev ran his palm along the surface. These tunnels are old, he muttered, much older than the mines. That means Crowley didn't build them, Pike said. He found them, and used them, Dev added quietly. After a long walk, the tunnel opened into a wide underground chamber. Lantern light revealed crates stacked against the walls. Some were open, others sealed. Dev approached one crate carefully, prying the lid loose. Inside were weapons, rifles, pistols, boxes of ammunition, all stamped with symbols from distant territories. Pike whistled under his breath. "Smuggling," he said. "He's moving guns across borders. This is worse than I thought." Dev checked another crate. "Fake gold," he said, lifting a piece with 2 fingers. "Painted wooden bars." Pike clenched his jaw. Crowley is flooding the markets with fake gold and arming outlaws at the same time. They had found their proof, but before the marshal could speak again, Dev noticed something else. Small markings in the dust, lines forming a trail. He guessed they were from a cart or some kind of hidden platform. Someone moved something heavy. Dev said. Pike followed the trail with his lantern, and not long ago, Dev paused, listening. The ground vibrated faintly beneath his boots. Pike whispered, "You feel that?" Dev nodded. "Something is coming." Footsteps echoed from the main tunnel, many footsteps. Voices murmured, growing louder. Pike grabbed Dev's arm. "Hide." They ducked behind the crates just as a group of men entered the chamber. Their lanterns cast shaking shadows across the walls. Dev peeked through a crack. He recognized some of them men from the saloon meeting, and Crowley's personal guards. One man barked orders. "Move the shipment. The mayor wants everything on the mule carts before midnight. The border team is waiting." Another guard asked, "And the new deputy?" The leader scoffed. "Crowley said he'll handle the boy himself. Probably already did." Dev's eyes narrowed slightly. Pike looked at him with concern. Then Dev whispered, "We need to know where the carts go." Pike nodded, but before they could move, one of the smugglers approached the very crates they were hiding behind. Dev and Pike pressed themselves against the shadows. The guard yanked the crate open, inspecting the contents. For a long moment, he stood there. Dev didn't breathe. Finally, the man turned away. "All good here," he said. "Start loading." As soon as the guards turned their backs, Pike pulled Dev close and whispered, "We need to follow them from a distance. Stay low. Stay quiet." The men began pushing the heavy carts through a narrow tunnel on the far side of the chamber, one Dev hadn't noticed before. "We go now," Pike whispered. Dev followed silently. They trailed the smugglers through the narrow passage, staying far enough behind to avoid the lantern light, but close enough to hear their voices. The path sloped downward, deeper into the earth. The air grew colder. Dev saw the walls again, those strange, smooth carvings. "These tunnels weren't made by miners," Dev whispered. "I know," Pike said. "Crowley's using passageways no one else knows exists." Dev kept thinking, if Crowley knew about these tunnels, how long had he been planning all this? And what else was he hiding? Ahead, the voices faded, replaced by the scraping of wood against stone. Dev and Pike stopped at the corner. They peeked carefully. The smugglers had reached a massive wooden door at the end of the passage. 2 men unlocked it with a large iron key. Beyond the door was a wide exit into a hidden canyon where moonlight poured in. Pike whispered, "That's the border route." Dev nodded. "We need that key, or another way in." Then he noticed something near the door, a small panel hidden behind loose stones. Dev's eyes narrowed. He understood machines, mechanisms, locks. He whispered, "I think I can open the door without the key." Pike stared at him. "Are you sure?" Dev touched the panel. "Yes." Before they could move, a loud voice echoed down the tunnel behind them. "Well, well, look what we have here." Dev and Pike spun around. 3 men stood there, all armed, all smiling cruelly. The leader stepped forward, raising his gun. "Mayor Crowley sends his regards." Dev didn't blink. Pike's hand went to his weapon. The tunnel grew still. Tension thickened, like smoke, and Dev Mather understood. This was the moment everything would change. Dev Mather stood side by side with Marshal Pike in the dimly lit tunnel. The air felt colder now, thicker. The 3 armed men blocking the way out wore cruel smiles, like they had already won. The leader of the trio raised his pistol casually, almost lazily. "Crowley said you 2 were getting too curious. Shame, really. But this is where your curiosity ends." Pike stepped slightly in front of Dev. "You don't have to do this," he said steadily. "Put the guns down. Walk away." The man laughed. "Marshal, I'm being paid more money than I'd ever see in 10 lifetimes. You think I'm walking away?" Another man spat on the ground. "Tell Crowley hello when you see him in the afterlife." Dev watched every small movement, their feet, their hands, the angle of their guns. He noticed something Pike didn't. The tunnel's right wall was weak. A crack ran across the surface, thin but stretching several feet. Dev studied the loose gravel on the floor, a small pile beneath the crack. The rock was unstable. A plan formed in Dev's mind, not perfect, but better than standing still. "Marshal," Dev whispered softly. "Step left." Pike glanced at him, confused, but trusted Dev enough to move a few inches. The lead gunman frowned. "What are you whispering about, kid?" Dev didn't answer. Instead, he took one slow step backwards, toward the weak wall. The gunman laughed. "Running already?" Dev said calmly, "No." He lifted his lantern and threw it hard against the cracked wall. It shattered. Glass burst out flames, burst across the dry dust. The heat struck the weakened stone. Boom. A deep, booming crack shook the tunnel. The wall didn't explode, but it crumbled just enough, sending a wave of rocks and dust crashing forward. The three gunmen were caught by surprise as stones rained on them. The tunnel filled with dust, blinding everyone. Pike grabbed Dev's arm. "Move." They ran deeper into the unlit tunnel, coughing as dust filled their lungs. Behind them, angry voices shouted and footsteps scrambled, but the falling rocks slowed the men down. Dev and Pike pushed forward until the noise faded behind them. Finally, they reached a small cavern where the air was clearer. Pike bent over, catching his breath. "Dev, you could have killed us." Dev shook his head. "I knew the wall wouldn't collapse completely, only enough to blind them." Pike stared at him with a strange mix of frustration and admiration. "You're a dangerous kind of smart." Dev didn't smile. "We have to keep moving. Those men won't stop." Pike nodded. "You're right." They returned to the large wooden door the smugglers had passed through earlier. The moonlight from outside dimly lit the edges of the ancient structure. Pike whispered, "This door probably leads to the canyon route Crowley uses. If we get through it, we might learn where the shipments go." Dev knelt by the side panel he spotted earlier. It was a small metal plate hidden beneath loose stones. He brushed off the dust and felt for mechanisms beneath it. "It's a release lock," Dev muttered. "Old, but designed well." Pike looked at the smooth carvings on the tunnel walls. These tunnels weren't made by Crowley or miners. Dev didn't respond. His fingers worked quickly, feeling the grooves. Click. A quiet metallic sound echoed inside the wood. Pike stepped back as the huge door shook, then opened slightly with a long, heavy groan. Dev had done it. Pike placed a hand on his shoulder. "You're full of miracles, Dev." But Dev was already alert. "Someone's coming." They pushed the door open enough to slip through. Outside, the view was breathtaking, a narrow, hidden canyon glowing under silver moonlight. A dirt path snaked down toward a distant river where shadows moved. Pike lifted his lantern. "Those are the smugglers." Dev saw them too. Carts loaded with crates were being taken toward the river. Horses waited. Men whispered orders. Everything was organized, efficient. "This is a whole operation," Pike said softly. "Bigger than we thought." Dev scanned the canyon. He noticed something strange. Two figures weren't working with the others. They stood aside, carrying rifles and watching the path carefully. Scouts, guards, and if there were guards here, Dev knew there were more. Pike whispered, "If we get caught, Crowley won't bother with warnings." Dev nodded. "We stay hidden." But before they could move, a sharp whistle echoed across the canyon. One of the guards pointed toward the open tunnel door. Someone opened it. The guard shouted. Torches flared. Shadows moved. Pike cursed. "We're exposed." Dev quickly analyzed the terrain. A narrow ledge above them, loose stones, a fallen log. "We go up," Dev said. Pike followed without question. They climbed the rocky slope as quietly as they could. Below them, dozens of smugglers spilled into the canyon, searching the shadows with torches. Voices echoed. They went this way. "Spread out. Find the marshal. Don't let the kid escape." Dev and Pike crawled along the ridge, keeping low, but the smugglers' torches soon lit up the slope. There, someone shouted. Gunfire exploded. Bullets struck the rocks around them. Pike grabbed Dev's arm. "Run." They sprinted along the ridge. Dust filled the air. More gunshots rang out. Dev ducked behind a boulder, noticing a small cave opening ahead. There, He pointed. They dashed toward it. The cave was narrow, almost hidden. They slipped inside just as bullets struck the entrance. Dev and Pike crawled deeper until the noise outside faded. Inside, the air was cool and quiet. Their lantern flickered. Pike whispered, "We can't stay long. They'll search every inch." Dev nodded. "But we need a new path. One they won't expect." The marshal exhaled. "You have an idea, don't you?" Dev looked at the shadows deeper in the cave. Yes, because in the darkness ahead, Dev noticed something familiar: old carvings on the walls, like the ones in the hidden tunnels. The cave wasn't natural. It was part of the ancient tunnel system. "It connects somewhere," Dev said. "Maybe to another exit." Pike's eyes widened. "If you can find that exit, we might escape." Dev lifted the lantern and stepped deeper into the cave. The smugglers hunted them outside. The darkness hunted them inside. And Dev Mather walked forward, calm, quiet, and certain, because he knew this was more than a fight for survival. It was the beginning of exposing every secret Iron Mesa tried to bury. Dev Mather walked deeper into the cave, with Marshal Pike following closely behind. Their lantern cast a soft circle of light around them, but the darkness beyond seemed endless, thick and heavy, almost alive. The cave walls were smooth in places, carved long ago by hands unknown. Strange symbols marked the stone, faint but still visible. "This place is older than Iron Mesa," Pike whispered. Dev nodded. He touched the carvings gently. "Whoever made these tunnels, they knew what they were doing. The designs repeat. They're like a map." Pike exhaled. "Then we follow your map." Outside the cave, muffled shouts echoed through the canyon. The smugglers were still searching. Their torches glowed faintly at the cave entrance. "We don't have much time," Pike whispered. Dev lifted the lantern higher. "This way." The cave narrowed, forcing them to crouch. Small stones crunched under their boots. Water dripped somewhere in the darkness. Every sound felt louder, sharper. Pike whispered, "You sure this leads somewhere?" "Yes," Dev answered without hesitation. "Air current is moving. That means an exit." Pike raised an eyebrow. "You can feel that?" Dev nodded again. "And I can hear a hollow echo. There's a larger space up ahead." The marshal shook his head in amazement. "Sometimes I forget you're only 16. Dev didn't respond. He stayed focused, guiding them through the twisting passage. Eventually, the cave widened into a large cavern so big their lantern barely lit the edges. Tall pillars of stone reached from floor to ceiling. The air tasted cold and metallic. In the middle of the cavern sat something unexpected. A wooden cart. Old, abandoned, covered in dust, but still intact. Pike walked around it. "This cart's been here for decades." Dev studied the wheels. "Maybe longer, but someone cleared a path to it recently." "What do you mean?" Dev pointed to the ground. "Footprints? Only a few days old." Pike looked stunned. "Someone else uses these tunnels." "Maybe Crowley," Dev said quietly. "Maybe someone he answers to." That thought hung heavy in the air. If Crowley wasn't the top of the chain, then Iron Mesa's corruption went even deeper. At the far end of the cavern, Dev found a narrow doorway carved into the rock. It looked almost perfectly shaped, too clean to be natural. Pike frowned. "Another tunnel?" Dev nodded. "This one slopes upward. Maybe it reaches the surface." Before they could enter, a distant voice echoed faintly. "Light. I see light in the cave." The smugglers had found the cave. Pike's eyes widened. "We have to move." They rushed into the narrow tunnel. The passage twisted sharply left, then right. The walls tightened around them, but Dev stayed calm. He traced his fingers over the stone. "We're close," Dev whispered. "How do you know?" "The air is warmer. And listen." Pike stopped. At first he heard nothing. Then, faint sounds, wind, loose leaves, the world outside. "Dev," Pike breathed, "you're a miracle." But their relief was short-lived. Footsteps thundered behind them. Shouts grew louder. "They're coming fast." Pike yelled. Dev increased his pace. The tunnel climbed upward. Light appeared ahead. Moonlight. "We're close," Dev said. But just as they neared the exit, a gunshot echoed behind them. A bullet ricocheted off the stone wall, inches from Dev's head. Pike spun, firing a warning shot back. "Go, Dev." "No," Dev said. "We go together." They both sprinted toward the exit as more bullets flew. hitting the walls like angry sparks. Finally, they burst out into the open air onto a rocky hillside overlooking the canyon. Tall brush and dry shrubs surrounded them. The night sky stretched above, bright with stars. Dev pointed. Down that slope, there's cover. They scrambled down the rocky hill, slipping on loose gravel. Another shot rang out from the cave, but the smugglers didn't follow immediately. They were cautious of the steep terrain. Keep moving, Pike said. They reached the bottom of the slope and hid behind a cluster of thick bushes. Pike leaned against a rock, panting. That was too close, he muttered. Dev didn't speak. He was looking back toward the cave entrance. A faint glow of torches appeared inside. The smugglers were searching again, but they hadn't seen which direction Dev and Pike had gone. We lost them, Dev said. For now, Pike added grimly. But they'll tell Crowley. Dev nodded. He knew the same thing Pike knew. The mayor would not stop until they were silenced. After catching their breath, they moved quietly across the hillside. The canyon behind them slowly disappeared into darkness. Pike finally broke the silence. Dev, what we found tonight, those crates, the smuggling route, the weapons, this is enough to bring Crowley down. Not yet, Dev said. We need proof that connects him directly. Pike nodded reluctantly. You're right. Without his name on something, he'll twist the story. He always does. Dev stopped walking. The men said the mayor wants everything moved before midnight. Someone might have written orders, or a ledger. Pike frowned. Where would Crowley keep something like that? Dev answered instantly. Somewhere close. Somewhere only he trusts. Maybe the old mine office. But that place burned down last year, Pike said. Dev shook his head. Only the top did. The basement survived, and the entrance is blocked. Unless you know another way in. Pike stared at him. Dev, how do you even know this? Dev looked ahead, his face calm. I listen. Pike chuckled softly. And here I thought I was teaching you. Turns out you've been 10 steps ahead this whole time. But Dev wasn't smiling. His mind was racing. Crowley had men, wealth, power. Dev and Pike had only each other. But Dev also had something rare. The ability to see truth hiding in the smallest details. When they finally reached the outer edge of Iron Mesa, Pike stopped. We can't go back to the sheriff's office, he said. It's the first place Crowley will look. We won't, Dev replied. We go to the old mining office. Tonight, Pike sighed. You don't rest, do you? Dev shook his head. Not while Crowley is planning something bigger. And he is. Pike smirked. Then lead the way. Dev looked toward the dark silhouette of Iron Mesa's rooftops, glowing under the moon. He knew the night wasn't over. Danger was still close. Crowley would not wait long. But Dev was ready. He stepped forward, eyes steady. Because tomorrow, the town would wake to a truth it could no longer ignore. The truth Dev Mather was about to uncover. The night in Iron Mesa was silent, too silent. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Dev Mather and Marshal Pike moved carefully through the dark outskirts of town, keeping close to shadows and avoiding the lantern lights of passing patrols. Crowley's men were everywhere now, more than usual, as if they sensed danger crawling beneath their feet. Pike whispered Crowley's doubling security. Word must have reached him. Dev nodded. Then we moved quickly. Their destination sat on the far edge of Iron Mesa, the old mining office, burned in a fire months earlier. Most people believed nothing survived the flames, but Dev knew better. He remembered the way smoke rose only from the top half of the building. He remembered the way the foundation sank at one corner, clear signs. The basement was still intact, and if Crowley kept any records, they would be hidden down there. Dev and Pike approached the charred remains of the building. Blackened beams stuck out like broken ribs. Ash covered the ground. The windows were shattered, and the wooden walls were scarred by fire. Dev lifted his lantern, examining the damage. Thought this place was destroyed. Pike whispered. Dev knelt near the base of a collapsed wall. The fire was controlled, Dev said quietly. Someone burned only the top. They wanted people to think everything was gone. Pike exhaled. Crowley? Dev didn't answer. He was already searching the ground, brushing aside ash and debris. Suddenly, he stopped. A metal ring, attached to a door handle, half buried under rubble. Here, Dev said. Pike helped him lift the broken boards and stones. Underneath, A square wooden door appeared the entrance to the basement. Pike grinned. Dev, you're something else. Dev pulled the handle. The door opened with a groan, releasing a puff of cold, stale air. Lanterns ready, Pike said. They descended into darkness. The basement was dusty but untouched by the fire. Shelves lined the walls. Papers were scattered across the floor. Old mining tools rested in corners. Dust spiders crawled across boxes stacked high. Dev scanned the room quickly. If Crowley kept anything, it's not out in the open. Pike nodded. Look carefully. We need something with his name. Orders, signatures, anything. Dev walked toward an old desk in the corner. It had survived, just barely. The wood was scorched, but the drawers remained intact. Dev tugged them open, one by one. Empty, empty, broken. Empty. Then he reached the bottom drawer. Locked. Dev bent down, examining the keyhole. Simple lock, he whispered. Pike waited. Can you pick it? Dev pulled a thin metal pin from his pocket. It took only seconds. Click. The drawer slid open. Inside lay a heavy leather-bound book, a ledger. Pike's eyes widened. Please tell me that's what I think it is. Dev opened it. His lantern light revealed rows of names, dates, tunnels, payments, and at the top of every page, stamped in clean, bold ink, Silas Crowley authorized OPR, Orrin S. Pike, whispered, this is it. This is everything. Smuggling routes, shipments, bribes, fake gold, all signed by Crowley. Dev flipped through page after page. The ledger was complete, detailed, organized, a record of every crime Iron Mesa had suffered. And then Dev froze. Marshal, he said quietly. Look. Pike leaned over. There was a section labeled Future Plans. The first entry read, Phase 3. Transfer all operations to the abandoned wells outside Dusthaven. Pike's face darkened. Dusthaven. Dev, that's your home. Dev swallowed hard. The words on the page felt like knives. Crowley wasn't just planning crimes in Iron Mesa. He planned to expand them. To Dev's first home. His people, his childhood. Dev closed the book slowly. His hands were steady, but Pike saw the fire behind his eyes. We take this to the sheriff's office, Pike said. This ledger will end Crowley's reign. But Dev shook his head. No, he whispered. Crowley has men inside the sheriff's office. They'll steal it before we can show the judge. Pike frowned. Then, where do we take it? Dev answered softly. To the people. Before Pike could respond, they heard a sound above them. A creak, a footstep, then another. Pike raised his gun. Someone's here. Dev blew out the lantern. The basement fell into darkness. They listened. Voices echoed faintly from above. Check the ruins. The kid might be hiding here. Crowley said he saw 2 figures heading this way. Dev whispered. They followed our trail. Pike clenched his jaw. We have to get out. Dev pointed to the far wall. There's another exit. Old mining tunnels used to pass under the office. Pike trusted Dev's instincts. They moved quickly and quietly across the room. Dev found a small wooden door half covered by dirt. He pushed it open, revealing a narrow tunnel leading into darkness. But before they could step inside, the basement door above them burst open. Light streamed down the stairs. There, someone shouted, Stop them. Gunfire erupted. Bullets smashed into the walls. Dust filled the air. Pike shoved Dev forward. Go, move. Dev sprinted into the tunnel, gripping the ledger tightly. Pike followed behind him, firing 2 shots to slow the men. The tunnel was cold, tight. They ran through it, with only faint moonlight guiding them. Behind them, the sound of footsteps grew louder. They're gaining on us, Pike warned. Dev didn't slow. The tunnel splits ahead. We take the left path. How do you know? Pike asked. I memorized the old mining maps. Dev answered simply. They reached a fork. Dev darted left. Pike followed. The smugglers followed the right tunnel, shouting as they raced into darkness. Pike smiled. Good call. Dev didn't respond. He stared forward, focused on escaping. The tunnel climbed upward. Soon they saw moonlight. They emerged behind the hills, outside town safe. For the moment, Pike leaned against a rock, exhausted. Dev, that ledger will take Crowley down. We finally have him. Dev held the ledger close, but his mind was somewhere else. Dust Haven. His people, the place he loved. Crowley planned to infect it with the same darkness that controlled Iron Mesa. Pike saw the look on Dev's face. We'll protect your home, Dev. I promise. Dev nodded slowly, but the truth was heavier. Crowley wasn't going to run. He was going to fight, and Dev Mather knew. The final confrontation was coming. Soon. Dev Mather and Marshal Pike stood on a quiet ridge outside Iron Mesa as the sun began to rise. The sky glowed orange and gold, lighting the land slowly, like a curtain lifting before the final act of a play. Dev held the ledger tight against his chest. It felt heavy not because of the weight of its pages, but because of the truth inside it. Truth that could destroy Silas Crowley, truth that could save Dust Haven, truth that would change Dev Mather's life forever. Pike looked out over the waking town. Once we show the people this ledger, they'll know everything. Crowley won't be able to hide anymore. Dev nodded. But he'll try to stop us. And we'll stop him first, Pike replied. The marshal tightened his holster and breathed deeply. Dev watched him for a moment. In all their time together, Pike had been a mentor, a protector, a friend. Today, they weren't just lawmen. They were the two people standing between Iron Mesa and darkness. Let's go, Dev said. They walked toward the town as the first miners stepped out of their houses and shopkeepers opened their doors. Iron Mesa looked normal, peaceful even, but Dev knew what hid under that surface. Fear, lies, secrets, and today. All of it would come to light when they reached the center of town. Pike climbed onto the wagon platform, the usual spot where announcements were made. Dev stood beside him, holding the ledger like a shield. People began to gather. Curious faces, nervous whispers. What's going on? Why is the marshal here? Who's that kid again? Pike raised his voice. People of Iron Mesa, we have something you deserve to know. Crowley's men appeared on the edges of the crowd, eyes narrowing. Dev noticed them instantly. He scanned every face, every movement, every potential threat. Pike continued. For months, Mayor Silas Crowley has been running illegal operations beneath your feet, smuggling weapons, trading fake gold, sabotaging the mines, and putting every worker here in danger. And we have proof. He held up the ledger, gasps, rushed across the crowd like a wind. Crowley's men stiffened, a ripple of unease moved through the people. Then, a voice called out from behind the crowd. You're lying. The crowd parted as Mayor Silas Crowley stepped forward. Surrounded by 6 armed guards, he walked like a man who believed no one would dare touch him. His smile was cold, controlled. He looked at Pike, then at Dev. I should have dealt with you two sooner, the mayor said, his voice calm. But it's not too late, Pike answered boldly. This ledger has your signature on every page. These people deserve the truth. Crowley didn't flinch. My guards deserve a raise for dealing with troublemakers. At his signal, the armed men stepped forward, guns ready. The crowd gasped. Mothers pulled children close. Men stepped back, unsure whether to run or fight. Pike whispered to Dev, stay behind me. Dev didn't move. He stepped forward instead. Crowley, Dev said softly, but clearly, the people aren't afraid of you anymore. The mayor's smile faded slightly. You're a smart boy, Dev, but you forget something important. Dev watched him closely. Crowley raised his voice. I own this town. Dev shook his head. Not today. Dev lifted the ledger and flipped it open. He read aloud. Shipment logs, hidden tunnels, fake gold, smuggled rifles, payments to deputies. He turned the book around, all signed by Silas Crowley. The crowd leaned forward. People whispered, shocked and angry. That's my name. A miner shouted. He threatened me to sign false reports. He shut down the water pumps. Another cried. Crowley's face darkened. Pike shouted, People of Iron Mesa, stand with us. Crowley's corruption ends now. The crowd moved. Slowly at first. Then, with growing strength, the miners stepped forward, forming a line. Shopkeepers stood beside them. Old men raised their canes. Even Crowley's own guards hesitated if they should protect the man who had betrayed everyone. Crowley saw the shift and grew desperate. These fools won't save you, he hissed at Dev. You're just a child. Dev looked him in the eyes. Maybe, but even a child can see what's right. Crowley's anger snapped. Killed him, he screamed. Chaos erupted. Crowley's guards raised their guns, but the miners rushed him. The crowd surged like a wave. People shouted. Weapons clattered. Dust rose. Pike fired a warning shot into the air. Dev ducked behind a wagon as a guard lunged for him. The man grabbed Dev by the collar. Snarling, Dev twisted, using the man's weight against him. The guard stumbled and fell. Dev grabbed the man's dropped revolver and pointed it but didn't fire. He didn't need to. Pike tackled another guard. Miners overpowered others. The fight was loud and messy, but the people of Iron Mesa fought with fury born from years of suffering, and in the center of the chaos, Crowley tried to escape. Dev saw him running toward the stables. "Marshal," Dev shouted. "Crowley." Pike looked up but was pinned down by two guards. "Go," he yelled. "Stop him." Dev sprinted through the dust and noise. His boots pounded the dirt. His heart hammered. He chased Crowley behind the stables, where the mayor climbed onto a horse. Crowley looked down at Dev with rage in his eyes. "You ruined everything." Dev lifted the ledger. "No, you ruined this town." Crowley pointed a gun at Dev, but Dev was faster. He threw the ledger straight at Crowley's face. It struck him hard. Crowley lost balance and fell off the horse with a thud. The gun flew from his hand. Crowley groaned, trying to get up. Dev picked up the falling gun and aimed it, but his finger never touched the trigger. Marshal Pike arrived, bruised and breathless. "It's over, Crowley." The mayor glared, but he knew it was true. The people of Iron Mesa surrounded him. His power was gone by sunrise. The town gathered again. Crowley was locked in iron shackles. The stolen weapons were collected. The ledger was taken to the judge. The miners cheered. Shopkeepers cried with relief. Iron Mesa was free. Pike placed a hand on Dev's shoulder. "You saved this town." Dev shook his head. "We saved it." Pike smiled. "What will you do now?" Dev looked out toward the horizon, toward Dust Haven, toward the unknown roads, toward the wide world waiting. "I'll go where I'm needed," he said softly. Pike nodded, respecting the young man's spirit. As the sun rose high, Dev Mather stepped onto the quiet road leading out of Iron Mesa. People waved. Children admired him. Miners nodded gratefully. Dev didn't wave back. He walked calmly, quietly like always, because legends don't stay in one place. They move from town to town, wherever truth needs finding, wherever justice needs a steady hand, wherever broken things, machines, or people need fixing. And so the story of mysterious Dev Mather began to spread. A story of courage, a story of truth, a story of a quiet boy who became a legend of the West. And though Dev disappeared into the horizon that day, people still whisper, he'll return when the world